What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin. We're joined here with Zach Stone for the weekly Monday Meta Watch video. We're going to go over Lorcana meta trends, tournament results, and what you should be expecting in this new Whispers in the Well format as we make our way through some awesome tournaments that we need to cover, like a CCQ that happened at the Dutch Open Series. Now, if you don't know what a CCQ is, that is a challenge qualifier. If you get first place, you get your invite to the national tournament of Lorcana, and there's not that many opportunities to earn that invite, so these are very important tournament results. And we're going to start off with the winner, Promised Land, taking Sapphire Emerald all the way to first place, running 4 copies of the new Cinderella Dream Come True. No wonder this is a $60 card on TCG Player today, right, Zach Stone?
Yeah, the Cinderella is coming in hot, but this deck list as well has been hot off the press, I would say. We see the Prince Philip, that is the Shift Vanquisher of Foes, really coming in clutch with the combination with Malicious, Mean, and Scary. This is the new 3-cost Inkable Emerald Song that does put a damage counter on each opposing character, and that does work in combination with the Prince Philip because on play it banishes each opposing damage character. So I like this card a lot, but this deck list includes 2 copies of Max Goof Chart Topper. I really think Max Goof is an excellent addition into the Emerald strategy. It's going to look like Emerald has the removal now. I want to point that out, but it is interesting removal, right? And Max Goof being able to sing your songs twice means Malicious, Mean, and Scary can become a grab your swords again. But you have other songs you can sing again, like One Jump Ahead and Mother Knows Best.
One Jump Ahead being sung twice by a Shift Max Goof probably is insane when you actually need that ink, right? But I think this deck's overall strategy is to ramp into that Cinderella on turn 3, right? You go Tipo turn 2. Turn 3, you can have 4 ink. Maybe you play Cindy or a Donald Duck. Donald Duck alongside Clarabelle are going to be the few cards in this deck that give you access to draw power. I think that's probably the big issue with this deck, is that there's not a lot of ways to draw cards, right? So if you do eliminate the Donald, you do eliminate their Shift Clarabelle line, they can be low on hand resources, but they are able to ramp to these big bombs. John Silver will stop you from questing. Basil bounces a card on play, and there's only 2 Hades in this deck, Zach Stone. I feel like I'm so used to seeing like a bunch of Hades and many Sapphire decks, but I guess when you're playing all these removal cards, you don't really need to max out on the high cost top end of your deck that is uninkable, right? Because like you mentioned, this Prince Philip Vanquisher of Foes, this is going to clear every damaged character, but if you notice, we're not playing the shift target. We are not playing the 3-cost Prince Philip to shift upon this. I don't think it's necessary in Sapphire Emerald, right? You're ramping so much, you're playing even Donald Duck focused Flatfoot. That's going to be even more ramp post turn 5. So maybe that's also why you want to play cards like One Jump Ahead or this Max Scoop combo, because you want to get to that 9 ink, right? I feel like Sapphire Emerald last format didn't need to get to those high end numbers. Like, yeah, you could kind of chill at 7, 8, maybe 9. But if you're playing 4 of the Prince Philip with no shift target, you want to get to that 9 ink. So I do think it's important to play some extra ramp cards in this deck. And in second place of this CCQ tournament, we have a Blurple list by Zaro. Blurple, still one of the best decks of the format, clearly. This list looks like it has a lot going for it, a lot of different cards. We have 2 copies of the new Junior Woodchuck Guidebook. This is a 2-cost item that'll let you banish itself to draw 2 cards. Very interesting. You got to pay 1 extra ink, so it's kind of like a Friends on the other side over the course of a couple turns, because overall it does cost 3 ink to use its whole ability. But, you know, more draw power for your Blurple decks alongside Second Star to the right. There's no Finders Keepers in this list. I can totally see that. I think maybe Junior Woodchuck might be a little bit more beneficial in a deck like this because it is lower cost. 4 Into the Unknown, everybody's got a weakness, also doing some damage there in this Blurple deck. But let's talk about the Ursula, the new Ursula Whisper. This is a 5-cost inkable character with 4 strength and 5 willpower that has a boost ability that will give it evasive and extra lore. So I guess that's some extra pressure you can put on the board while, you know, you're constantly questing with your genies or Dolores maybe. But it's also another evasive character that you can add to your arsenal in this deck full of evasives that you can maybe use to draw off Dumbo. But there's only 1 Dumbo in this deck, Zach. How are you feeling about that?
One Dumbo is interesting. I wonder if they're just trying to fit more cards overall, or if they're just trying to adapt to the more evasive answering meta that we have. I do believe that Whispers in the Well printed a lot of alert characters and some extra removal for
That's
evasives
true.
specifically.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, Dumbo may not be the card we want. However, including some copies of it is probably necessary. I'm a little bit biased. I mean, I'd probably play at least three. I can see at least the Dolores coming out for me and playing Dumbo instead. But who knows? Maybe Dolores is just what you need in this format, and just questing and closing out games, I think, is going to be a little bit more necessary, right? Because we're noticing a lot more removal. I think every lore gain will matter like it always has, but especially now because we have a lot of board wipes now with the Prince Philip and Spooky Sight, and that is not included in a deck like this. And I don't think Blurple wants to Spooky Sight you. I think they kind of just want to play more onto the board. They have Into the Unknown, and this list specifically plays Everybody's Got a Weakness. This is a 4 cost action that chooses a character and moves all damage counters to that character.
Yeah, we also have a 4-cost Demona Gargoyle I want to go over. This is the Betrayer of the Clan. It's a 4-cost Inkable with Challenger +2. Has a 4 Strength and 6 Willpower stat line already. So this character can swing for 6, which again also has the Stone by Day ability. So when you have more than 3 cards in your hand, you cannot ready this character. And that feels like it is kind of an issue for Blurple because you have all these draw cards, right? So that's probably why you're not playing too many of the Gargoyle characters. But this is a 4-cost character that can clear a 7-cost Hades or even an 8-cost Elsa in a mirror match. So I really do like the use of Demona in this deck. A very interesting deck list, you know, but hey, there's a lot of people kind of making interesting deck lists since the recent DLC win because, won by none other than Frank Karsten, who was playing a variety of one-of. So I do think that the strategy is kind of catching on.
And we have Frank Karsten here making top 4 of the same CCQ. You know, Kevin, yeah, you did bring up how he won Milwaukee with Purple Steel, and we all got to see his deck list perform in kind of like split fashion because of how he built it. And he's not shying away from that strategy again, but we are seeing 4 Dumbo in this list. Again, I just think that card is still an amazing card right now. There's no reason not to want to play 4. In my honest opinion, a lot of these evasive cards that we saw last format still should be a threat into this format. There's just more answers to evasives now, but that doesn't mean that these cards are necessarily bad at all. It just kind of means that, you better have these answers to them, right? But in this list specifically, we have the new Violet Saberwing. This is a new 2-drop 3/1 evasive character. So I actually want to go over another 2-drop, the Black Heron. This is a 2-cost 3/3 vanilla, but the stats on something like this is so good because it's inkable. It only can quest for 1, but it still puts a lot of pressure into the board. This is essentially like playing more Calhouns that are inkable, which I really like. And this new Cheshire Cat, this inexpendable one, this is a new boost character that allows you to move damage like a bell, right? It moves 2 damage from a character to an opposing character, and you can basically kind of manipulate the board that way. We aren't seeing any more Fire the Cannons because I don't believe we are in an aggressive meta anymore, but we are seeing the new Hades looking for a deal and the 6-cost Demona as a one-of in this deck, which I think is perfect and only should be a one-of in Purple Steel. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
I'm actually playing 2 Demona in my Purple Steel deck because it's inkable, so I do see that. But I have different ratios than this Frank Karsten list. I'm on like 2 Hades, 2 Demona type thing. I'm on less Dumbos because I'm playing Iagos as well. I really appreciate Frank Karsten's deck list because it's more than just looking at a deck list and being like, oh, he's playing Purple Steel and he's playing, the new removal cards. I'm looking at the ratios of 1-drops as well, right? He's playing 4 Diablo, 4 Captain Hook, 1 Happy, and 2 Palace Guard. This looks a little different than his list in Milwaukee, and I think the 4 Diablo is in there now because of Mean and Scary. Malicious, Mean, and Scary, that combo deals it puts 1 damage counter on everything. And before, the board wipe used to be Under the Sea. Everybody was going, lower your strength, Under the Sea. Diablo was terrible into an Under the Sea deck. And now Diablo is just really good into that blue-green situation because if they do board wipe you, you get to draw into maybe your Cobra. Maybe you draw into something like Doc, White Rose to end the game. Very nice. Happy, only a one-of now. Last format, a bunch of evasives, guys. It was nothing but Elsas, Genies, Dumbos. So playing a lot of Happies was very beneficial because it meant that your opponent, they couldn't quest all the time because your Happy could swing back into that. Now, Happy only has 1 willpower. It loses out to Tinkerbell, Malicious, Mean, and Scary. A lot of stuff happening. Even the Cheshire Cat here can remove the Happy because of how little willpower it has. And I do want to talk about this card, Zach, because it's a damage-moving card that we've replaced Bell, Accomplished Mystic, with. Bell was a 5-cost character that moved 3 damage, but Cheshire Cat's a 3-cost character that can move up to 2 damage, right? I do think this card is a little bit better, though, because one of the problems with Bell is that it kind of stays in your hand until it can be played, and sometimes it is better to play Elsa, even though you can play the Bell. And and it's just harder to get the value off the bell if you don't play it then and there. Whereas the cat over here, you can play this on turn 3. Not only are you threatening a Strength of a Raging Fire, but if your opponent decides to do some like bad quests or bad trades, then you do get to threaten the extra, fire the cannons effect of moving up to 2 damage. And you can just leave it on board, ready, not questing, until you decide to use it. So, and your opponent has to really think about their quest lines and their challenges, which is really cool. And last but not least, we got the Lexington. This is like a staple in the Amethyst Steel lineup right now. Pretty much any Steel lineup right now. It's a 3-cost character, 4 strength, 4 willpower that has Alert, the new keyword that lets you challenge evasive characters on your turn as if you had evasive. And you're going to see Lexington in every Steel deck. I like that he's playing a 3-1 White Rose ratio. The whole thing about this deck, man, when you watch his interviews, he's basically saying, I'm playing a different deck when I'm going first. I'm going to go Diablo into Timothy Q Mouse into Tinkerbell so that I can quest for 2/2/2 over and over again. And when I'm going second, maybe I want to do something a little bit more reactive. Maybe I want to play Captain Hook into Calhoun into a Cobra so that I have big swingers back to back to back, right? And I think that's really what you want to do when you're playing Lorcana now. Next up, we have a Sapphire Steel list from this same tournament. This is a top 8 Sapphire Steel list. We got to go over this one too, guys, because Sapphire Steel is more than hyped in this meta. It's a really good deck. You're able to ramp into your 7-cost characters and start singing Beyond the Horizon. He hurled his Thunderbolt, Strength of Raging Fire. This is probably a deck that you can play 4 of each of those cards, right? But we're only seeing 2 in this deck list by Alex Queek over here. But really, I think what the best part of this deck is that it's the best deck, in my opinion, to utilize the Cinderella Dream Come True with the Goliath Gargoyle combo, right? So you're going Cinderella on turn 3. You get to ramp an extra turn. By turn 4, you're already at 6 ink. Doesn't that feel like how far I'll go again? Doesn't it feel like you're just infinitely ramping faster than everybody else? And then you drop this card, you're able to draw 2 cards every turn. It's kind of nice. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I think if you have like the perfect curve on the play of like a 1-drop into Tipo, into Cinderella, into Goliath, I think that empties your hand and you could just draw 2 right away.
Oh,
But
nuts.
if that also isn't, fancier tea there, you can also just be dropping these huge characters that do a lot to the board, like Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, Hades Infernal Schemer, Vincenzo Santorini, and the new Shift Headless Horseman. This is a 8-cost, 5 strength, 7 willpower, 2 lore quester that reads, when you play this character, both players, or I think all players, draw 3 cards and then randomly discard 3 cards. And then you choose an opposing character and deal 2 damage for each action discarded this way. So that means if you and your opponent are discarding, 3 or 4 actions after this effect, you're more than likely taking out anything you want. But even just discarding 2 is really good. Taking out genies has to be really impactful. I really like this card. It's super amazing. And let's just go ahead and mention the fact that like it is a shift Floodborn. So if we wanted to play this card any earlier, we can play some shift bodies, right? And I'm just excited for this card. Honestly, I think this card is one of the real reasons why this deck is really powerful. I think being able to just snipe down any characters and just kind of like changing the game in a different way, like being able to just disrupt your opponent's hand is crazy, and finding like certain answers from it. You don't mind discarding all these actions later in the game because if you have 8 ink, you can usually play anything anyway.
What's really cool too is you're playing the Mari, the single-minded rival, which lets you draw and discard cards on play and at the beginning of your turn. So let's say you're in certain scenarios where you really need to remove a character on board, but you have Namari on board. You can manipulate your hand, you draw, discard some cards, maybe leave more actions in your hand. Then you play the Headless Horseman. I feel like you've improved the odds of you discarding some actions there. I really like the Headless Horseman, Zach Stone. It reminds me a lot of Dr. Boom from Hearthstone, and I think it's very interesting how it works with both players, right? Like the impact that actions are making in both players' decks is going to, make the impact on the board, right? Because if my opponent's playing an all-character deck, then this damage is going to be based off of basically all the actions that I discard. But last format, it felt like nobody was playing more than like 8 to 10 actions, and this format, we're seeing a big difference. We're seeing some combos, we're seeing a lot more songs being played in these decks. This deck actually plays 18 actions total. Almost 1/3 of your deck is action. So I do think that you're in a good position to be able to drop this Headless Horseman and maybe at least deal, 4 damage like you mentioned to clear a genie. So that's really cool. Here we have an Amber Steel aggro list, guys. This is from the Top Choice Gaming Whispers multi-case tournament. Almost 40 players for this event, and it popped off pretty well. Some pretty top tier players in this deck, and I believe top 4 split their pricing. So we have Patrick Crosby here up in that top 4 with Amber Steel aggro featuring Aurora, Tiana. Oh, and actually no Tiana combo. Whoa, they're just Aurora, Mulan combo, and this new princess we have in the deck, Elenwi. This is a Storyborn ally princess character that has support, and this combos off really, really well with your new Rapunzel Ready for Adventure, another princess character that you can cheat off of Aurora. This character reads, whenever a character is chosen for support, until the start of the next turn, the next time they would be dealt damage, they take no damage instead. It's kind of cool. It's like an extra protective barrier, you know, for an example, on one of your characters. So let's say you're able to set up one of your support characters and this Rapunzel. You can quest with your Rapunzel. You can give support to your Sleepy. Sleepy gains that extra ability of that Rapunzel protection. So now when your opponent swings into that Sleepy, they're going to take no damage for that first swing. They're going to have to, you know, utilize more characters potentially to clear this 0-4 bodyguard character.
Yeah, this new Rapunzel is really interesting. I want to kind of talk about a couple ways that this card can interact. Now, essentially, whenever your characters are chosen for support, it's going to give this bubble. But this bubble can be essentially used because that support gives that strength to that character. Now, when you have an Eloy and a Rapunzel, you can quest with an Eloy, give the support to the Rapunzel. That strength is given to Rapunzel, who has support. So then when you quest and give that strength, which is 3, to another character, you've essentially bubbled 2 characters this way. And it's another way to kind of just utilize this Rapunzel over and over again. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a problem the later the game goes, because if you have more than like 3 characters with support, you're just giving all your bodyguards this bubble and everything else is just turning sideways. It's going to get to a point where you need to find your spooky sites or your mean malicious scary, because I do believe placing damage counters gets past this bubble. However, I could be wrong on this, so let me know in the comments down below if that's not how it works. But it is just another way to just get rid of these annoying threats too, because you can give this bubble and that strength to one of your characters, and when you challenge, nothing happens besides their character going to the discard pile. Your character stays because the bubble has been popped, which means it will take damage here on out until another bubble is given to it.
Whoever said aggro wasn't going to be relevant in this format is obviously not correct. I feel like Amber Steel is probably going to be the aggro deck you want to play, mainly because you're able to capitalize on the current meta. We're playing 4 Pete, games referee in this deck, and I think Pete is going to be the best way to, you know, stop that malicious, mean, and scary combo. Granted, if there's already damage on your characters, that shift prince will still clear your entire board, but you're also playing 4 Mowgli in this deck, Zach. This is another way to take a peek at the opponent's hand, snipe one of those songs away, maybe stop their combo from progressing. I think one of my favorite plays is one you mentioned earlier. If you're going first, you're able to potentially drop this Mowgli on a Sapphire opponent before they can play Sail the Azurite Sea, and that can be very detrimental for some of those strategies. So I do feel like aggro does have a place in this current meta. We're seeing 4 Lilo Escape Artists in this deck, and I think that's very strong as well. Like we were saying earlier, Under the Sea really isn't the board wipe right now. People are using that Prince Philip as their main board wipe, and cards like Lilo Escape Artist benefit very heavily from kind of a mass destruction board wipe as opposed to something that says put this in the bottom of your deck. So I do like the decisions made here in terms of deck building choices, and we're also featuring this new bodyguard. I've been seeing a lot of Amber decks play this new bodyguard, Raja. 3 cost thinkable, 3/4 vanilla with bodyguard. Just a very strong stat line to be able to curve out them from your early game, right? If you open up Daisy into Nala into this Raja bodyguard, I feel like any deck is going to be shaken after you do those turns. So Amber Steel still coming out on top. No Tiana though. Let me know what you guys think down below about that. Here we have a deck list from one of our good friends. Here's Shaner's Direct Let's Go Gambling Sapphire Steel, who also made it into top 4 of this Top Choice Gaming tournament. Very similar to the other Sapphire Steel list we saw, Headless Horseman, Goliath, Vincenzo Santorini, and we are playing the Jump 1, Jump Ahead, which is very fun. 3, he hurled his Thunderbolt, a bunch of actions to be able to use his Headless Horseman. But we're playing Pleakley in this list. Some extra ramp that we have seen in Sapphire Steel before, right? So you have your Tipo Sail line to go into Cinderella, Dream Come True, or maybe instead you go Mulan into a Pleakley later on to start playing some 5-cost characters a little earlier, right? But Sapphire Steel, very strong deck in the meta. A huge shout out to Shane and all of them over there in the San Bern area for always dominating these tournaments. Shane, if you're watching, we know you're always grinding it out, so we can't wait to see what you do in this season of Lorcana. I wonder if they're going to be at the new DLC, because DLC tickets go on sale today, Zach Stone. Are you hyped?
Yes, if you're watching this, you guys have probably either are, excited and can't wait, or you're heartbroken. And we feel for those that are heartbroken. We do hope you guys are able to get tickets though. These DLCs are getting better and better and they are making improvements. So we do have to give credit where credit is due. And same thing here with Shane's deck list. I do want to kind of talk about how there's additional princesses to trigger the Cinderella's ability, and you're going to just be able to find more of those cards you really need and get rid of some of the
Oh,
cards
that's
you
true.
don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, honestly, this is like Sapphire Steel is going to be probably one of the most represented decks. And I do want to kind of mention Shane is on 0 copies of Captain Hook, and that is probably where you want to be. I'm not a fan of Captain Hook right now. Challenging into this format doesn't seem necessary. And again, that is another princess you can play to trigger this Cinderella. So shout outs to Shane and Team Red Saber Games for making this tournament mostly theirs.
Here we have another Purple Steel deck list from the top 8 of this tournament. This is by Team Goons, Andrew Hoyt, titled Evan Still Smells. A Purple Steel deck list looking pretty similar to the ones we've been looking at, Demona and Hades. This one playing 3 Demonas, though. Not really the one-ofs like the Frank Karsten list, but other than the one-of Doc. That's very interesting. That is very interesting, right? Because Doc feels like a staple in Purple Steel. It feels like it's a card that you really wanted to play at least 3 of, if not 4. And only seeing one, it just feels kind of wild to me. But Demona is kind of like a dock, I guess, right? On play, you're going to draw cards. The biggest difference is, though, that your opponent gets to draw cards off Demona as well. And in a purple mirror match, a gargoyle mirror match per se, I feel like the person who drops their first Demona is kind of in the losing position, because when your opponent responds with their Demona, it really hurts, because yours does not get to ready after it's been exerted, because now both you guaranteed have 3 cards in hand, right? But we're also seeing 2 copies of this new 1-cost Olav, the Helping Hand. This is a character that says when this character leaves play, you get to bounce one of your other characters to your hand, which can be pretty cool. You can bounce back your Doc, maybe a Hades looking for a deal to potentially draw more cards. What do you think?
Definitely deals being made here with the Hades, but I kind of think right now the people are trying some stuff out, right? And I'm not too sure if we found some like solidified, like standardized deck lists. I think we're all trying to experiment with some of these new cards, and we no one really knows what's right and what's wrong. So trying these things out, trying out different ratios is totally fine, and you are still able to find success with different ratios. I think this game will still come down to how well you can play, and there's still a lot of different card choices that you can make in the wide meta here. And again, one dock isn't even too bad because you can never really brick on it if you only play one. And there's a lots of ways to draw in Amethyst. We have
That's true,
Genie,
by
we
the
have
way.
Dumbo, and Hades is now an actual draw card. I will admit that card most of the time says you can draw 2, and that's also solid. So you may have too many cards in your hand, and you are still playing some high cost uninkables like Genie and 3 copies of He Hurled His Thunderbolt. So we may not be able to always get the value we want. And so the one dock is just kind of there as like a little backup plan because we have a lot more draw power than what we used to have before.
That might be my favorite argument you just said, by the way, about not playing more than one dock, because you can never brick on it. And yeah, Lord knows I get frustrated when I open up more than one dock in my hand. But very strong points there being made by Zach Stone. Huge shout out, Andrew Hoyt, Team Goons over here representing always at these tournaments. Now let's go over the results of the Sharp Gaming 10K tournament. Love that there was so many huge tournaments this weekend. We hosted by some awesome tournament organizers. Feels like some of the tournaments have been getting smaller and smaller in size in our local area, but we are finding still huge tournaments happening across the board, so that's really cool. We have an Emerald Amethyst list that was in top 8. I believe they actually went undefeated in Swiss, according to Mo Shamblin, aka that Mo kid. He is known for playing green purple, so go follow his socials, his Twitter, so you can get the actual sauce. He actually made a very insane YouTube video too on his channel last format, going over like an hour's worth of how to play the Blurple deck, which was really cool. But Emerald Amethyst, a deck that really wasn't seeing much play last format, I feel like all of a sudden got a huge power boost. This deck is really cool. On turn 1, you can set up a Webby Vanderquack play against these Sapphire decks. So whenever they ramp on you, you can shift into your Webby Vanderquack, and if you quest and your opponent has more ink than you do, you get to ramp back. So against these Sapphire Emerald decks, against these Blurple decks, against these Sapphire Steel decks, every time they resolve a Cinderella, a Tipo, or a Sail, they're gonna feel bad if you still have this Webby Vanderquack on board, and she has Ward. Very cool. You can't use Strength of a Raging Fire to remove this character. You can't bounce it back with Milano's Best. You have to challenge it. And right now in Lorcana, there's not that many characters that can swing for 4 willpower power from turns 1, 2, and 3, and it's a shift 2. So you can play this as early as turn 2, a very high pressure card in a deck that can generate quick lore and close the game out pretty easily when you're dropping cards like Prince Philip, Vanquisher of Foes as well.
Something that I do want to kind of mention is warded characters can only be chosen by a challenge. So cards like Gogo Tamago are going to get a lot of value because you're going to have to swing into this Prince Philip or this Webby Vanderquack, and that's going to put some damage counters on your character if it's still on board. And Gogo Tamago is always known for closing out games kind of like out of nowhere, and if you're not respecting her, you are going to take a loss. I would be very conscious of this card against like an Emerald Amethyst deck. But another thing about the junior prospect Webby is that like against the blue decks it just solos it, but like even on the draw against anything else, like not shifting her but just playing her on curve is very interesting. Again, has ward, can't be dealt with, and when they ink to go to 5, you can start to get ahead after that. You can quest, get your ramp up, and now you have more ink than your opponent. So it's still a decent card to play on the draw. It's just not what you want to shift into most matchups that aren't blue, but it's still a solid card. And again, Emerald is the removal deck. So Malicious, Mean, and Scary, as well as Mother Knows Best and You're Welcome. On top of Hades to get rid of characters is just very mean. And again, did we talk about Cheshire Cat just being a 3-cost 3/4 if you're not boosting it? I mean, that's
Yeah.
still very
Overstated.
tough bodies to deal with.
Overstated, right? Some of the whispers are a little overstated. Yeah, I like it a lot. I like that we're doing this to Lorcana, man. And this deck is mean and scary. There's so much removal. Emerald is the removal color right now. I do want to talk about the other boost character in this deck. This is a 1-cost Flynn Rider. Now, this at first, when I saw it, I thought, why would you play this card? It doesn't seem that good. It's a 1-cost inkable 1/2, and you have to pay 2 ink just to boost it, right? But you only boost it once, and it gets its static ability, which will turn it into a 3 strength character that can quest for 2. So I feel like it could be pretty good against like some of these Sapphire decks. You open up, you're on the play, and you're able to open up this Flynn Rider, start questing for 2 immediately. I've been testing this deck out, by the way, and as I was testing this deck out, I noticed very quickly that some of the decks in the meta right now, they take some turns to set up. They take like turns 1, 2, and 3 to start setting up, and you can kind of set up your Flynn Rider into an Ursula or maybe like into a Webby Vanderquack play. And as you start simplifying the game state, when you boost this card later on in the game, you just have an extra like a bunch of 2 lore questers in this deck, right? So it does start to feel like you're gaining little increments of lore, and out of nowhere, you're just in go-go range to win the game. And it's really cool to combo go-go off with Mean and Scary because, you can always just add more damage counters to the board. Let's say you're trying to get to that last 4 lore or something, your opponent only has 3 damage on a character, you can use Mean and Scary, and then potentially reach that last 20 lore right there. Some pretty cool combos you can do in this green-purple deck, this format.
Remember, when you boost a card under a character and you return this character to your hand with Madabim Elephant, that's getting a free extra card. So think about that next time.
Oh, that's probably why they do the Flynn Riders X-Stone with the Madam ML. Oh, yeah, I was wondering. Oh, yes, that's so genius. I was like, why Elephant too, bro? You're losing tempo. You're gaining the cards back to your hand with Flynn Rider. That is so cool, man. Huge shout out that Mo Kid. He's cooking. And in first place of this 10K tournament, we have Havinus with a Sapphire Steel deck. Very cool. I do believe like top 4 or top 8 split the pricing, which is really cool, but they still played it out to see who would be crowned the champion of this 10K. And we had Sapphire Steel take it all the way home. We've seen a lot of these cards in the other deck lists that we've gone over, but this list is playing 2 copies of Spooky Sight, a 6-cost uninkable action that reads all 3-cost and lower characters on the field go into their player's inkwells exerted. And yes, this does include your own. So if you got lingering T-pose afoot, this is going to be able to put them into the inkwell as well. But really, I think you want to use this card against the opposing purple steel decks, or maybe you run into a random aggro amber steel matchup or an amber emerald dog deck. You're gonna use this Spooky Sight to completely wipe their board. Very cool. We're also playing 1 copy of Ink Runner in this deck. This is a 2-cost item. You draw a card, and you could also give alert to any of your characters. And you're playing big, beefy characters in Sapphire Steel. So giving alert to something like this Mayor Wind Dancer, a 4-cost uninkable 5/7 vanilla, means that you can use this card, a 4-cost character, to swing over something as big as a Elsa or a Genie or a Dumbo, right?
Yeah, some character that I've always felt like if it ever has evasive on it is the most powerful threatening card ever is Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, and Ink Runner giving it alert essentially can challenge evasive characters, which is the point of it, right? I think if that card is ever given alert or evasive, it just tells any like purple deck or any like, green, red deck, any of those three colors that they just can't turn their evasive cards sideways. And slowing the game down is really beneficial for you because you have tons of removal with the Hades and Vincenzo's that it's really going to work out a lot. I like the inclusion of Ink Runner in a deck like this, and we are seeing different variations of Sapphire Steel, so not all deck list is the same. Which deck list do you like the most? Let us know down below in the comments.
And here we have Bro Hamilton. He got his second place at this tournament with Emerald Sapphire. Yes, Emerald Sapphire alongside Sapphire Steel kind of dominating these tournaments, right? And look at this, more Spooky Sight in this deck list. Spooky Sight's an interesting card because it kills all the aggro decks, and then maybe people just stop playing aggro decks, so players think, you know what? I'm not going to play Spooky Sight in my deck anymore. And then the aggro decks come back into the meta, Very, very interesting. But even if you have no Spooky Sight in his deck, you still got 4 copies of Malicious, Mean, and Scary with your Prince Philip Shift combo. We do see at least 2 of the Royal Explorer here for the Prince Shift combo in this deck list. Let me know what you guys think down below as well. Are you guys going to be playing the shiftable target, or do you think it's just more reasonable to ramp to 9 and drop this card, with the Malicious, Mean, and Scary, right? Like last format, we were essentially doing the same thing. We were getting to 6 and trying to sing either Heads Held High with Under the Sea. Now you got to get to 9 and just sing Malicious, Mean, and Scary and drop the Prince Philip, right?
Yeah, and honestly, there's just like almost no way around it. I'm very curious to see if we're gonna have any additional answers or more like hand disruption in future sets because there's almost like no like counterplay. I mean, Emerald might start playing Ursula Deceiver to rip the songs out of the hand, but again, I still don't think it's like that. What's the word? Like, it's not what is necessary like needed for Emerald to like take over these games, right? I just think like consistent removal and consistent like beefy characters is just going to be hard to deal with the later the game goes. So eventually it's going to get to the point where like Malicious, Mean, and Scary isn't needed. It's just kind of like this like catch-all to like unstable situations, and when like things get out of hand you can get rid of the whole board, but it might come down to just like who can play their bombs and time them correctly. So this format is developing fast, no pun intended, so let's use our brains here.
And here we have an Emerald Amber deck by Gabe Golfer. This was also in the top 4 of the Sharp Gaming 10K tournament. And this list looks way different than any green-yellow deck that we've been seeing in the last couple formats. We're playing more of a control kind of Circle of Life combo variant without any of the Lady and the Tramp cards, except for Tramp, the Street Smart Dog, because this is still a character that you can play for way less than what it's worth, right? So on turn 1, maybe you set up a Pluto. Turn 2, you can set up a Mowgli to look at the opponent's hand, or maybe some Bobbies plus another Pluto or something, because then by turn 3, you can use the Pluto. You can play Tramp just a little bit earlier, and any card you discard is now in range of being brought back by Circle of Life, which is really cool. So you can discard Prince Philip, Clarabelle, or maybe even Surfer Stitch with the Tramp Street Smart Dog combo, sing it with Circle of Life, and all of a sudden you have like 2 7-cost characters by turn 5 on the board. Kind of nice. I like it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna call this deck the zoo because we got cows, we got dogs, we got ducks, we got lions, we got mice, we got tigers, and we got some wranglers in there. We got some aliens and some horsemen to keep them all there. But this is just a very strong deck. I actually think that something like this is going to be a little bit of a problem. And let's talk about this Scar, the Vengeful Lion. Now, whenever one of your characters challenge a damage character, you're going to draw a card. And Malicious, Mean, and Scary is going to put damage counters on your opponent's characters. So you essentially have like a draw engine with Scar and the Malicious, Mean, and Scary. And the Mickey Mouse Amber Champion, I think, is a very crazy card because you're playing things like Pluto and Huey, and these are pretty weak bodies that can die to most 1s and 2s. But when you play this Mickey Mouse, they actually become a little bit harder to deal with, and they start discounting everything else you need to play. And on top of that, when you are finding your Street Smart Dog, you're just flooding the discard pile with all these big bodies for Circle of Life to sing. But another thing to kind of bring up here is that like Mowgli is one of these like hand disruptions. So being able to just like get some knowledge and figuring out which one of these big bodies is going to be better for you to play, I think is like really cool. And again, catching all things with Ursula Deceiver and Mowgli, just playing those in sequence should be important. Remember, you should be looking to play the Ursula before the Mowgli if you have both, because the Ursula is going to always be able to rip the the song, and then you can have like another decision to make, right? If you don't need to play the Mowgli, if they just don't have any songs in their hand and or any other non-character cards, you can ink it and just play from that, right? But ripping out two cards just sounds disgusting in this format.
Next up, we have another green-yellow deck titled Dogpile. Huge shout out to Royce Townsend for getting first place at the Wishes Case tournament hosted by Safari Zone. Looking like Pluto is very popular in this strategy because it does let you play out your Tramp Street Smart Dog just a little bit earlier, but this deck list is focusing way more on the aggro Lady and the Tramp style that we're used to, right? Well, we are seeing 4 Ursula and 4 Mowgli in this deck. I think they agree with you, Zach. Ripping cards from the opponent's hands pretty good this format, so why not maximize on both of those? 3 of the 3-drop Clarable to draw some extra cards, and 3 of the new Scrooge McDuck Shush Agent. This is a character that'll let you draw and discard a card on play, which is kind of what you want to do with this deck. And whenever this character's challenged, it goes back to your hand. So unless you're going to be removing this character with like a Fire the Cannons or a Strength of a Raging Fire, you're always going to have a 2 Lorquester to deal with on the opposing side of the board. Kind of feels like another Lilo Escape Artist, no?
Yeah, I will say that this is going to be a card that just doesn't leave the board until you get rid of it outside of challenging, which is going to be quite difficult. I know the Emerald's going to have a lot of removal with the Malicious Mean Scary and Prince Philip combo. However, you have Ursula and Mowgli to rip that song out of the hand. But this list does have 22 uninkables. It is something they really consider. I'm not the biggest fan of playing all these uninkables. However, I think we can justify it a little bit more because of the Bobbies and the Scrooges. We are going to be able to draw and discard cards. We are trying to filter our hand, right? And if you get to drop the Street Smart Dog, it is just finding you the cards you want. So you are getting rid of all those uninkables or those characters that you would rather just not have right now, and you're just finding all the gas you need. And again, Lady, the Shift Lady, can add your 2-drops and your 1-drops back. So if they do manage to get rid of that Scrooge, he might be coming back again.
And here we have another first place list looking very similar to the first green yellow deck we saw. This is by IKL Strong, a Amber Emerald list from a tournament that had around 25 players. And this deck list is also featuring the Circle of Life combo, which is going to let you play out characters from your discard pile way earlier. You can use Tramp Street Smart Dog to flood your discard pile, but you could also use Bobby or Yzma to do that, which is pretty cool. And Pluto. Pluto's probably just a staple now in this green yellow combo, right? I think playing out this Tramp is probably very, very important in this deck.
Yeah, we are also seeing the Yzma. That's the 2-drop draw and discard. So we have more cantrips to kind of just filter out all these big bodies and get them back with Circle of Life, but only 1 Under the Sea. I think we're kind of just more focused on like doing what our deck's supposed to do, and less on just trying to react to the opponent. Again, we have the catch-all with Malicious, Mean, and Scary, but it's starting to become an interesting meta. Like it's already developing like too fast, which it's good overall for the game. And I think it's very awesome to see everyone excited to play Lorcana again. And that means this game is really good, right? Because when the set's released and people want to play the game, then they're doing something right. Honestly, green yellow is here to stay. I think this color combo is awesome. And I love to see Circle of Life in action. It's one of my favorite cards in this game.
And last but not least, and thank you for watching the whole video and sticking around this long, we have a Dead Pumpkin Society deck by The Grumpy One. This is a first place list from the Battle Bear set release tournament. Huge shout out to Battle Bear. I believe they're based out there in like Germany or something, but every time a set comes out, I always know they're doing a tournament, so it's always cool to be able to, see if there's tournament results on Inkdex when the new set comes out, right? I believe they had about 30 plus players for this tournament, and Sapphire Steel was the winning deck. I do got to talk about this Ratigan, the Greedy Genius. 2 copies of this 8-cost character that'll quest for 4, has 6 strength, 7 willpower, and ward. But if you don't ink that turn, you have to pop this card, right? So you got to be inking every turn that you play the Ratigan or have the Ratigan on board, so you can survive. But usually this is going to be a game closer, right? After playing all your heavy questers like your Vincenzo Santorini or your Headless Horseman, your Goliaths and Amaris, you can end the game with a Ratigan to quest for 4. That seems pretty strong.
Yeah, not one blue steel deck that we've shown on this video today has been the same, and I do love that. It's like you have like the same core concepts but different card choices, and because of that, you don't know what to expect. I do like Ratigan, but I'm not the biggest fan of warded characters anymore due to the Prince Philip combo, so I'm not too sure if I'm sold on it. That's a lot of ink now to invest, and again, you have to keep inking cards or Ratigan will banish itself, but there's just a lot of answers monsters now. So I just don't know how I feel about Radigan anymore. This is still a very good deck, and I do like they included more actions, but they're playing less copies of Headless Horseman, which is one of my favorite cards in this deck. I don't know. I just like gambling, and that's kind of what this card gets to do, right?
Yes, no, the card is fun. Like the Headless Horseman card is actually just a fun card to use. And I feel like even in like other formats, multiplayer formats too, this card's going to be really like just like exciting for the game. But I think the meta in general for this format is going to be pretty exciting for the game. I know there's already some salt in people's wounds over the Cinderella Dream come true. I don't think the card is like that amazing where it like needs to be banned. Like as we've seen here from the variety of tournaments we've covered, it's not all Sapphire, right? It doesn't feel like we're in a Sapphire Ruby meta. It doesn't feel like we're in a set 2 Ruby Amethyst meta. There's been a lot of variation, whether we're playing Sapphire Amethyst, Amethyst Steel, Blue Green Cow deck, and even some winning Emerald Amber Dog decks, or that Circle of Life combo deck. If you would have told me last week that that was going to be dominating some tournaments, I wouldn't have believed you, right? So overall, I'm pretty hopeful for this meta. I'm excited to see what the format brings. Richmond is our next DLC, which is in January, and tickets are going up very soon. So let us know if you're going to be there at that DLC. Let us know what you think down below in the comments of these deck lists. And overall, I kind of want to hear your opinions on Cinderella Dream Come True. Is that a bannable card, Zach Stone? What do you think?
Bannable card, like I'm going to want more time to play around with this card before I kind of say that. Now I think what we're trying to really understand now, Blues main strategy is ramp on 2, ramp on 3, because they had the same kind of card with how far I'll go, and now we're just getting it in a body form. So I'm not going to say it's bannable, because there's other cards that I think can be more of a problem. Like realistically, a card that you could probably ban that makes blue less powerful is Hades. Like if you just ban Hades and you just ban these like really big cards that they want to
Wow.
ramp into, what does this ramp do? So like let's think objectively. Like it's enabling all these cards to be powerful, but like the powerful cards are just still going to exist, right? And ramp's still going to be there. So I don't know. I think that blue is going to have this, and it's going to be a common theme. And if it's if it's basically a same 4 cost ramp but different font, then we're gonna want to ban every single one that comes out. I'm not sold on that idea. So I think we should have more time to play and really allow us to identify problems. And I know Ravensburger will listen to us, but I think banning cards is, yeah, you really have to make sure you're doing the right thing. And again, it's healthy to ban stuff, but it also means that they're designing, is a little flawed there. So if you're not banning stuff, that's good.
Okay, very well put, Zach Stone. I don't think the card is like bannable either, but again, don't know how the format has been developing. I feel like if we were able to play formats of like a bunch of dumbos and nothing but evasives, I think we can deal with a princess on turn 3. Nothing too crazy, right? You can always use Strength of Raging Fire. I think what's crazy though is that yeah, you do get the ability on play, and when it does stack, it does kind of snowball a little bit in these types of decks. Personally, I think Sail the Azurite Sea is just an infinitely better card than all these other ramp cards, right? Like if any card is the best ramp card in the game, I think it's Sail the Azurite Sea. And I don't even think that card needs to be banned or anything. But I think this just goes to show that maybe we need more removal in certain colors, right? Amber after like what 2 years almost of Lorcana is the first time we get an Amber action that can pop cards outside of Criminal Mind with the Horseman Strike. So I have faith that we'll get more cards in the future to also deal with the Cinderella combo. But it's looking like most Sapphire decks, they're going to want to go, Clarabelle, Tipo into Cinderella. So I think it starts dropping their bombs pretty early on. So now you know what to expect at your tournaments this weekend. Thank you so much, my Lorcana Goons, for watching the Monday Meta Watch video featuring me, Kevin, and Zach Stone up here. We hope you guys enjoyed this content. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because it does support the channel. Zach Stone, anything you want to say before we call it a day here?
Yes, guys, this is honestly an exciting start to the Whispers in the Well meta. There is going to be a couple CCQs that are coming up, and one that I'll be attending is the Las Vegas CCQ at the Star City Games Con. This is November 21st, 22nd, and I believe the Saturday event, it's the 10K. That's also a CCQ, so the winner gets to go to the Continentals this season, and I'm excited. I can't wait to meet some of you guys there, see some familiar faces. So make sure if you guys see me, say hi. I'll have some stickers and some goons to sign, maybe some other stuff that we can talk about. But yeah, let us let us know down below which one of these decks were your favorite, which one you plan on playing, and join our Discord so you can always discuss your decks. And who knows, you might be able to find some interesting deck lists in our deck list discussion.
And remember to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons for more, and we'll see you goons next time.